Recently, I've had a history of discovering a lot of really obscure and niche stuff and obsessing over them for months at a time. One day I'll make the Hibirike speedrunning video, I promise. There's just something really fun about finding a piece of media that not many people know about, and it's doubly fun when it's actually good. And not Pac-Man monsters, look at these character designs, they're trapped inside a dead gacha game. And it's most interesting when you literally stumble upon these really obscure things. A few months ago I had a literal once-in-a-lifetime discovery with the Cyborg Kuro-chan series. Cyborg Kuro-chan is an anime about a cat named Kuro who becomes a cyborg-chan. It was adapted from the manga of the same name and ran from 1999 to 2001, though was cancelled before it could finish all of its planned 75 episodes. This show is adapting a gag manga for kids but revolves around silly slapstick humor with a side of action. If the concept of robot cats fighting with Gatling guns and giant swords sounds alluring to you, then this will just be episodes upon episodes of pure dumb fun. Except for when it takes itself seriously, that just adds to the show's appeal. So the premise of the show is that Kuro, a black cat living with its elderly owner simply named Grandma and Grandpa, is saved from the brink of death by the mad scientist Dr. Go, who turned him into a cyborg to join his army of robot cats bent on world domination. Kuro defects and now has to balance his normal life defending his loved ones while also using his new cyborg capabilities to fight evil, and also butt heads with Dr. Go and his queer platonic second-in-command Me. That is until they become friends. Villains in the show tend to just assert themselves as new main characters sometimes, no matter how hard they were trying to kill Kuro in the last episode. Go arguably still wants to kill Kuro if the exploding baby incident is anything to go by.
More like 6 feet on the ground!
The show tends to stick to a monster of the week format, with Kuro typically squaring off against some sort of robot that's trying to kill him. Though the farther you go in, the weirder these monsters get, like there are at least 2 terrorist plots. It's a bit of a shame because the show will very occasionally do many story arcs and they're fun to see. I'll get into the big one later, but there will sometimes be direct continuity between adjacent episodes. Like there's a string of episodes involving Kuro running away from home, and there are 2 devoted to this creature called the Hebi Binga. If you saw this thing, would you give it more than 2 episodes? Cyborg Kuro-chan, or Cy Kuro as it's nicknamed by fans, is pretty awesome. But there's one big issue, at least for English speakers. This show is only half translated. Tumblr user Jamie Purple has subbed episodes 1 to 31. But doesn't seem to have any interest in subbing the rest, and nobody else is taking up the mantle. There were a few English subs for the show, but both of them are almost completely lost with only a few episodes servicing. One also had literally no script, so it probably wouldn't be the most reliable way to watch the show anyways. The manga is in a similar boat, though it seems that there's active work on an English translation. Either way, if you're a bloody Yank like me or a freaking Brit,
How the fuck did you get into my room?
then the show is unfortunately closed off to us. If you're Indonesian though, congrats, that's an epic win! Which is why I really want to talk about this, because if I don't, who is? Thanks to its circumstances, Kuro is unbelievably obscure. The only reason I know of the show is because I tried searching up evil oarsman on Tenor, and somehow fucked up the spelling so bad it started showing me gifs of me. But I really enjoy it. I admit the show is extremely turn your brain off, but it has a very fun and interesting art style, and it does its slapstick really well. And everything about it is so silly and over the top that it loops back around to being plain awesome. I'm not a fan of doing recaps, but for the sake of this video, I think I should go over episodes 1 and 2 to really communicate the show's vibe. My belief is that if these 2 episodes aren't for you, you probably won't like the rest of the show. But if you enjoy them, then wait, you get somewhere between— why did I do that? But if you enjoy the show, then you get somewhere between 30 to 70 more episodes to go depending on your linguistic ability. The very first thing the show drops on you is of course its theme song. It's not very good. Okay, I will give credit where credit is due, it's very catchy. I'll randomly find myself going just completely randomly, and then the entire song will get stuck in my head. And the little background jingle that serves as the show's main leitmotif sounds pretty good, but I cannot listen to this song more than twice in the same day. And that second time it's just to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating the first go around. Am I speaking heresy? Do Kuro fans play this song while they're working their giant muscles at the gym? I don't know, and I never will, because I'm half convinced most Kuro fans are either dead or on the other side of the language barrier. But let's not go on a tirade about the opening theme for a kid's show about robot cats. We're formally introduced to Kuro, who protects Grandpa and Grandma's house from thieves, since their senility, whatever, fuck you, makes them very easy targets for, well, anything. Yet these 2 are the physical embodiments of the sweet but incompetent old person trope. They love Kuro and each other with all their hearts, but they're hilariously dumb, to the point that Kuro essentially has to babysit them or they're gonna make mustard gas in the bathroom. Anyways, Kuro has a bit of a crush on a girl, a dog named Puli. She looks horrendous, why do they feel the need to yossify this dog? But as he goes to confess his love to her, it's revealed that Dr. Go has been stalking him and shoots a missile at Kuro that isn't very good at doing missile things. The missile misses and ends up heading straight towards Puli, and Kuro jumps in the way to save her. Later, he wakes up in Dr. Go's lab, where the scientist is putting his finishing touches on Kuro's new cyborg body. He implanted a mind-controlling microchip inside Kuro, but through sheer awesomeness, Kuro noticed and plucked it out before Go got a chance to activate it. The first thing Kuro does upon waking up is shove his foot in Go's face in what is possibly one of the greatest animation shots ever. Go is trying to amass an army of robot cats in order to take over the world. Introducing his Nyan Nyan army, don't get too attached, and Kuro does not feel like joining that at all. So he ends up blowing up the lab and walking home. But he can't return to his owners looking like this, so he disembowels a black cat plushie and wears it like a skin suit. Am I the only one who thinks this is such a weird design decision? Like having Kuro be a black cat with a robot shell inside a black cat suit? I guess Kuro just looking normal wouldn't line up with any of the other cyborgs in the show, but I just find this whole secret identity thing so strange for some reason. Either way, Kuro realizes that since he's a cyborg, he needs to drink fuel for energy, so he finds an unattended motorcycle and imagine being some guy watching a cat drink gasoline from a motorcycle's fuel tank like it's a baby bottle. Eventually Go and the Nyan Nyan army catch up to him, and Kuro ends up learning another thing about his new body. He's near immobile underwater. Somehow the Nyan Nyan army don't have this weakness and can turn into submarines, which ends up saving him as he destroys most of the army, only leaving 4 left. Well, 5, but Nyan Nyan number 9 is so scared of Kuro that he leaves and is literally never mentioned in the series again. Once Kuro gets home, he learns that Puli and her owners ended up moving away, which is just a writer's way of explaining why she isn't in the story anymore after having to censor the poor girl getting her throat punctured by an arrowhead in the manga. Episode 1 ends with Go and the surviving Nyan Nyan army members, which doesn't include number 9 because he's probably like chilling in a forest somewhere roasting marshmallows, tracking Kuro down to his hometown. But someone came along with them. It's my boy! Mikun, as his name is never said without the honorific at the end, is my favorite character. I love him so much. Once again, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have even gotten to this show. He's Dr. Go's first cyborg, and second strongest alongside Kuro. He actually has a pretty demented backstory where he was a stray kitten adopted by Go, whose mother was killed by this dog chimera thing belonging to Go's rival, and was turned into a robot in a last-ditch effort to save him after he tried to avenge his mother and failed. This encounter is also why Go's missing an arm. He's so incompetent that you probably assume he accidentally cut it off in a lab accident or something, but no, it got bit off by this abomination. Speaking of Go, he and me have the most homoerotic energy I've seen from a man and a robot cat. They live like they're married, celebrate their anniversary of meeting each other by dressing up and going on picnics, and they practically adopt a child like 15 episodes in. It's a very endearing twist on the mad scientist and his invention trope, because Go and me see each other as equals and will move mountains for the other. Meanwhile, Dr. Jero is getting betrayed by the same robot twice. Also, Mi has the power to fuse himself with machinery for some reason. That's how he got Skimmity Toilet. Somebody shoot me in the head. Episode 2 directly continues off of the first, with Go hatching a scheme to get revenge on Kuro that involves taking the grandparents hostage in a mall. Mi gains respect for Kuro after he saves them and even helps Kuro stop Go's plan, which on that topic, the concept of Kuro blasting him off to the ground from the inside is so cool in that over-the-top way. And I guess I should mention the show's ending theme, Positive Vibration, because it is such an earworm. The difference between this and the opening is literally night and day, like take a listen. Now let me remind you what the opening sounds like. It's a very somber, reflective song about Kuro having to accept his new circumstances as a cyborg. It kinda gives out the vibe of his mechanization being a gift with a steep cost, which isn't really explored much in the series. Playlist material, I need a song injected directly into my veins. After these 2 episodes, there are a couple more that develop Kuro and Mi's relationship, ultimately turning them from frenemies into friends along with Go. So now the show's about 2 robot cats and some guy getting to misadventures. And then aliens show up. But first, Kuro befriends a normal-ass guy named Suzuki. He's a Gundam-obsessed elementary school teacher whose students bounce between barely tolerating and despising. He's this perfect mix of loser and underdog that lets his misfortune be funny while also making you want to root for him every time he's on screen. He ends up getting a crush on the firefighter Megami, who has a super adorable design that makes me wish she was more of a mainstay. She's a bit one-note, with her joke being that she will rush to extinguish even the tiniest amount of fire, but her self-assured high energy clashes well with Suzuki, who spends every waking moment of his life trying not to fall apart. And yeah, there are aliens. Well, alien robots, but that's just semantics. They're not semantics, they're romantic! Meet Romeo and Juliet. Can you guess what their dynamic is? There isn't much to say about these 2 as characters, other than the fact that they're really delightfully weird in a way that tickles my jammies. Yeah, we're keeping that in. Kuro meets Romeo after he kidnaps Mi and brings him to the Arctic. Romeo is a robot created by this alien to act as a servant, and once Kuro defeats the alien and frees him from his servitude, Romeo's first course of action is to kidnap the grandparents and coerce Kuro into playing tag with him. This episode is really funny because there's a gag where Mii keeps on gloating that he was #1 in some popularity poll. A few episodes later comes a two-parter where the whole cast along with these two kids come together to look for a treasure in ancient ruins that Suzuki found a map to in his house, and the treasure they find at the end is... Juliet is just Romeo but pink because she's a girl. They were star-crossed lovers, literally, who got separated after the aliens crashed down to Earth. Now that they're back together, they kinda end up coalescing into one character with just giant lamppost aliens in love. I mean, good for them. And then a few episodes later, Kuro and Mii run into the genius child Kotaro. He idolizes Kuro and still wears a suit to look like him. I can say that he's in a fursuit, right? There's no weird connotations from saying that. By the way, he's committing actual terrorism. In his debut episode, Kotaro is kind of a psychopath. He hijacked the ship in order to attract Kuro and Mii, and once they arrive, Kotaro starts talking about how nothing ever interested him aside from JRPGs. And then he tells Kuro that they're doing a suicide pact now. Kotaro's plan is to drive the ship into a power plant so it will cause a nuclear explosion that will kill them all along with countless civilians. Kotaro wanted to reenact Chernobyl for the sole purpose of I'm bored. Though don't worry, Kuro gives him a motivational speech and it cures his insanity. They're friends now. It's so weird because Kotaro goes from a deranged genius to just a kid who makes robots in the span of an episode. Like, once again, literal terrorism just because he was getting sick of playing Final Fantasy. What a funny little fella. The next episode is about him trying to free this slimy befriended named Dunk from the zoo and bring him back to Africa. It doesn't go very well. There's this really dramatic shot of Kotaro and Dunk jumping towards the ship that'll take him to Africa, and then it cuts to them at Go's lab and they're like, oh no, he got fucking shot, he's dead. But Go ends up saving him by turning him into a cyborg, so now he's Kotaro's cyborg line pal. And in the next episode, Kotaro gets so inspired by Go's robotic skills that he asks to be Go's protege, and whoops, he's adopted now. The second to last important character is Matatabi, a vagabond cat with a grudge against Kuro. I love this guy's fighting style because it is literally just that one Moon Knight image, but his primary weapon is a boomerang. I describe him as a series' Meta Knight, but it came to my attention that he's actually voiced by Kirby's voice actor, so it's really funny. Matatabi's interesting because he introduces Kuro's past before he was taken in by the Fujis, being a street cat named Kid. Kuro and Matatabi got into a fight that took the latter's eye, so he left and started traveling the world to get stronger enough to beat Kuro. He's also an expert carpenter. Whenever Kuro's house gets destroyed, Matatabi takes it on himself to fix it. He's a jack-of-all-trades guy, which I think is cool, though he himself doesn't contribute much. He is the catalyst for a mini-arc where Kuro runs away from home though. Kuro and Matatabi start fighting while the latter is crashing at his house, and the grandparents end up getting caught in the crossfire. Kuro feels guilty and runs away, looking for somewhere else to stay for a while. This mini-arc also introduces us to the final character to round out the main cast, Nana. She's a female character made to interact with a predominantly male group in a manga for boys so you can guess at her personality.
Why, it's Amy Rose, of course!
I like her though, she's a fun character. She has reason to be attached to Kuro considering he was the only person who showed compassion to her. She was built off of a desk lamp that was thrown away for being faulty, and then was brought to life for the sole purpose of being Kotaro's servant. But obviously she's a little too attached. Also, her design is great. She's like cat girl Chibi Robo. She's meant to be small since her base is a desk lamp, but I swear she's differently sized in every shot. I don't know if the animation was rushed or something, but sometimes shots are just done in a way that makes some characters look tiny, and I don't think that's just me having awful depth perception. At least I hope it's not. I need to point this out, the only piece of key art for her that I can find is this extremely unflattering piece that makes her look terrible. She doesn't even make this face usually. Who did this to her? And that sums up the main cast. There are some less prominent side characters like the private defenders of Japan. For some reason, the concept of a private military is super funny to me. Like, yeah, we just gave ourselves the funding to produce actual military grade equipment. Mii beats up the leaders enough that he ends up becoming the head of the organization, which means that occasionally Mii will just call up the military to help them solve a problem. There's a part in an episode where the private defenders come, Mii tells them to fuck off through a walkie-talkie, and they immediately leave after a screen time of like 2 minutes tops. And of course they brought up Megami earlier, who doesn't show up nearly enough for my liking. She's like a completely different character in the manga for some reason. Well, not exactly, but her characterization is a lot different in the manga. She's a Gundam nerd like Suzuki, which is something they mutually bond over as opposed to Suzuki getting a crush on her and then following her around everywhere. She's more mischievous, teasing the others unlike in the anime where she's kind of oblivious to everything, and she doesn't have the even a match can start a fire mentality that defines her character in the anime. I like manga Megami way more if it wasn't clear. Speaking of the manga, the Nyan army vanished without a trace after the second episode, but they returned for a chapter in the manga. After Kuro destroyed them all, they were trapped underneath the rubble and eventually hauled off to another country with the rest of the wreckage. They spent months trying to return to Go, and once they find out that he's turned over a new leaf, they feel betrayed and kidnap him. Their backstory is that they were kittens that Go and Mii were raising, who died after people burnt down their house with a kitten still in it, but Go was able to save them by turning them into cyborgs. Kuro promised to stop humans from mistreating them by taking over the world, so when he gave up on that idea, it was like he was giving up on them. Very sad story for the joke villains. Doesn't help that they bitterly leave and never come back. And number 5 gets beat into a pulp by Kotaro. Imagine being a robot getting your ass beat by an 11-year-old with its bare hands. You can probably tell that this series is very character driven based on how this entire video has been structured around introducing and explaining its characters. And yes, it's a comedy meant for young kids first and foremost. That doesn't mean it can't focus on story. But more often than not, you're not watching the robot cat fighting show on the edge of your seat wondering where the story will go. But Cyborg Kuro-chan does try to present engaging storylines occasionally, and they're typically a delight to see. The series' standout example is its longest story arc, I'm pretty sure, the New World arc, or Other World arc, or Another World arc, I don't know the correct terminology for that. In this, Kuro and his friends are transported into a, well, new/other/another world, and thrown into the middle of a war between two factions who want to take ownership of an ancient, seemingly powerful structure in the middle of a desert called Taboo. It's a really fun arc because it places the characters in a completely unique situation, and forces them all to be more active than they tend to be. It also puts them in these weird ass pairings like me and Romeo are prisoners of war together, and Matatabi is giving Dr. Go a pep talk. The focus is obviously on Kuro since he's the main character, but nearly everyone gets something to do. Nearly everyone. Kotaro gets a lot of focus, being isolated from everyone and befriending a pirate named Fox. This is such a cool design, and then she takes off the mask and is like, God damn, go back! He ends up being instrumental in solving the mystery of this other world, while Mia's cooking eggs and Romeo's demanding troops to open fire on civilians. This arc has very anti-war theming, highlighting just how unnecessary this fight for Taboo is, and how it's pretty much turned life into hell for everyone involved. It's a very bleak world juxtaposed against the goofy cast of the show, which lends itself to an interesting storyline. The highlight of this arc for me is the robot, Vice. Kuro meets him after he gets separated from Nana and Juliet, and Vice takes him to the nearest settlement to go look for them. But when he spots them next to the general of one of the military factions, he reveals himself to be a bounty hunter part of the Cyborg clan who is tasked with eliminating him. And then, after Kuro fights off the rest of his group members, Vice challenges Kuro to a battle at none other than Taboo itself, taking Nana hostage as leverage. It's eventually revealed that he was a robot made by the unknown creator of this world to serve as the guardian of Taboo, stopping anyone from coming in and discovering its secret. But he's lived for over 300 years and has gotten so sick of his existence that he just wants to die, but still feels obligated to serve the purpose he was created for. Therefore, he wants to die in battle against an opponent who surpasses him, which is why he's so adamant on fighting Kuro. It's a really interesting piece of characterization and a fun take on the robot guardian of an ancient artifact trope, and he just looks so damn cool. His fight with Kuro at the end of the arc is awesome, even if I feel it should have been a bit longer. He pushes Kuro to its absolute limit, and I'm pretty sure this is the most damage he has ever looked after a battle. Vice is so cool, man. I was hoping that he would join Kuro back in his world and find some purpose there, but unfortunately he meets his end at Taboo. Meanwhile, Kotaro and Fox manage to just barely make their way into Taboo, and reveal the secret that the creator has kept hidden for 300 years. This entire world was completely artificial, being just a metal dome with a sky projected over it. This was foreshadowed earlier in the arc, where the question is brought up to why there are so many abandoned aircraft carriers and nobody has flying technology. Their ancestors had tried making planes and such, but they would always crash into the top of the dome, so eventually they just gave up. It's like the Skyblock episode of Minecraft Story Mode, where there's an entire world outside of their tiny localized space, and the locals are left having to grapple with the fact that their reality had just been expanded. Yes, I just referenced Minecraft Story Mode. I have very strong feelings about Minecraft Story Mode. The arc ends with the interesting and unanswered question of why this mysterious creator wanted to keep the real world hidden, and Kuro and his friends are able to return home. So yeah, really interesting little arc there. It doesn't seem like the series does anything like this again, but the manga translation that I've been reading is still a work in progress, so maybe a longer arc happens there. I know there's an arc in the manga revolving around an abused kid who ends up becoming a cyborg, which is cut out of the anime, but there's no English translation for it yet, so I don't know how long it is. And that is kind of the extent of my knowledge on Cyborg Kuro-chan, since I exhausted practically every piece of translated media that's currently out for it. I could watch the latter half of the anime without subtitles, just straight raw dogging it, but am I really going to do that? Now before you go in the comments and say that I'm not a real Kuro head, I don't have a comeback, I'm just going to segue into something else. So the Cyborg Kuro-chan anime went on for 66 episodes before it ended, but its cancellation ended up being very premature. Its production studio, Studio Bogi, went bankrupt in 2000, bringing the sudden end of the show. A 66th episode was ready to go through, and I believe it was accidentally aired on Japanese television because we have it. The remaining 9 episodes that were planned for the show's 75 episode run are considered lost media, but the community has scrounged up bits and pieces of what these episodes may have revolved around. Now you may be wondering, how did the studio go bankrupt? Was Cyborg Kuro-chan just not raking in enough money to keep them afloat? It doesn't seem like that was the issue, considering just how many merch deals the show had, especially including its success in other countries such as Hong Kong and Indonesia. If you can fund a mascot costume of Dr. Go, you can fund a studio. That's how the transitive property works. Kuro fans have done a little digging on the studio's history and found a potential culprit. Koki Matsura is a former producer and a now known criminal. The leading theory is that the show's producer was embezzling money from the studio, which was layered on top of allegations of animators of the show not being paid. Apparently after the show's cancellation, Kuki had been getting up to borderline schemes like what I'm pretty sure is a pyramid scheme, though I'm not exactly sure if there's any concrete proof that he's been getting up to shady business regarding Studio Bogey. Considering that there's not really any source for this claim, along with the one about not paying the animators, it's funny to think that the guy who got Cyborg Kuro-chan cancelled fled his home country though. Apparently he lives somewhere in California or Texas. We gotta find him. On that note, I've ran out of things to ramble on about this series. If it wasn't made abundantly clear, I really like Cyborg Kuro-chan. The art style is fun, the comedy is right up my alley, it's got some good action, and it's the only show in existence with me in it. It's crazy to me how I could have gone my entire life not knowing the show even existed if I managed to spell evil oarsman correctly. I don't even know how I spelled it so wrong to get a gift of me, but I'm eternally glad my brain actually shut down and caught on fire at that moment. Though also, it's sad that I'll probably never get to experience the whole show. It seems like I'll be able to finish the manga, but with how the second half of the anime seems to be completely different stories from the manga, I'll always feel like I'm missing out. But hey, maybe this video will get some more eyes on the series, and with the new intention, maybe somebody will want to pick up where the last person left off. And even if nobody does, it'd be nice to have more people checking the show out. While Cyborg Kuro-chan may be simple and childish, it has a lot of heart and isn't afraid to be over the top or appeal to your emotions. And I think that's why I like it so much. It knows what it is, but it isn't afraid to defy that. Maybe could have done without Go and Kotaro dressing up as stereotypical Native Americans, but you do you.